One day after the FBI completed one of the quickest arrests in leak investigation modern history, the 21-year-old arrested in connection with the leak of that trove of classified documents appeared in court today. Jack Tejera was charged with possessing classified documents pertaining to national security and possessing national defense materials, which carry a maximum of 10 years behind bars. As we continue to learn more about just how and why he got a hold of those documents and disseminated them, it should come as no surprise to those of us who've been watching closely that on the fringes of the right in American politics, right after his arrest, the instinct was not to reflexively support law enforcement or U.S. national security or the Pentagon or intelligence, but to support the guy who endangered all those things. Hours after his arrest, Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted her support for the suspected leaker, saying he was an enemy of the Biden regime, which nobody knows for sure. And she pushed the same anti-Ukraine line that the fringiest of the fringe has peddled since the war in Ukraine began. John Brennan and Michael McFaul are still with us. Director Brennan, I thought this represented a dangerous and important escalation of the right support for national security threats. It's one thing to be out there rah-rah cheering for the jailed January 6 defendants, many of whom have pleaded guilty to the charges they've been charged with, many of whom filmed their own criminal acts. But to take someone who has leaked national security, national defense information, and before a lot of the facts are even known, leap to his defense and platform a defense of him on the most watched program on Fox News represents a stunning and dangerous new development on the right.
Yes, these comments are absolutely contemptible. They are doing Putin's bidding for him. And by these comments, they are disrespecting and disparaging the selfless sacrifices that are made every day by women and men in the intelligence community, in the diplomatic service, in the U.S. military, those who really do all they can to keep their fellow citizens safe. And so people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who says these things, it really just shows not just their ignorance, but how much they are actually trying to undermine our national security and this country's freedom and democracy. And that's why I can't understand what is motivating them other than they're playing to this far right, this group of people who seem to have no sense of what this country's values, this country's democracy is all about. And that's why I don't have words to express my anger and my disdain for what she and others are saying right now.
Well, I think what I always look to where the chips are falling on the right, and I didn't see, and if I missed it, I'll air it on Monday, but I didn't see Pompeo or Ratcliffe, two Trump appointees to head the nation's intelligence agencies, condemn the support for the leaker. But what seems to endanger the country and its institutions, regardless of who is running them and who's in control, is the illegality here is not in dispute, right? He's been charged with the crime, there's probable cause, the documents were disseminated. And the reflex and the permission structure to do it again has already been disseminated. It's done. The damage is done, Ambassador McFaul. And I wonder, John mentioned the Russians. Could the Russians have developed a play that efficient and that effective in all their wildest dreams?
Maybe, I doubt it. This is a self-inflicted wound. I just agree completely with what John said. I can't understand it. I can't understand how anybody who cares about the United States of America, who wants America to be great, can look at what this gentleman did and say, how does this advance any national security interests of the United States of America? That is just completely illogical to me. And people are making these claims on behalf of this gentleman, and he's not even making these claims. That's what's strange about it to me. This is different from other leakers who said they had some, thing that they were trying to do to advance democracy in America, et cetera. This is not that, and yet they do this. And I have to say, I'm just perplexed by it. I do not understand the strategy.
I mean, John, I don't pretend to understand the strategy, but I do know what happens on the right. I mean, Pompeo won't boycott Tucker Carlson's show because he endangered U.S. national security because he wants to be president. Neither will John Ratcliffe. I mean, what happens is the permission structure and the shrugging of the shoulders and the cowardice on the right is a feature of the Trumpian right. And the casualty over and over again isn't just the rule of law, but it is the very things that protect every one of us. I mean, how do we function as a democracy if one of the two parties shrugs its shoulder when it's threatened?
Well, I think we see continuously that one of those parties does do that all the time. And you're absolutely right. Silence is bad enough on the part of the Pompeos and Ratcliffes of the world. But those who actually are encouraging this type of behavior and this type of activity are actively abetting the undermining of our national security. And I'm still waiting for the Republican Party to come to its senses. And there are so few of the individuals in the Republican Party right now who I think really feel very strongly about U.S. national security needs to be protected. And so, the Kevin McCarthy's and others who need to come out very strongly and just denounce these comments made by Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, if they really truly believe that our national security is something important that needs to be protected and safeguarded in the future.
Liz Cheney, for one, came out swinging and said that Marjorie Taylor Greene should not have a security clearance. I'm going to ask both of you to weigh in on that on the other side of a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're back with John Brennan and Michael McFaul. I'll read Liz Cheney's tweet in a second, but I want to start with what this is really about, it appears to be, with you, Ambassador McFaul. This has at its roots the disdain for American efforts to bolster Ukraine on the battlefield in its war against Russia. So this has, and I don't like to give the right too much credit for having a policy objective, but this is what Tucker Carlson said. I'm not going to play it. He praised Tahera as someone who told Americans what's actually happening in Ukraine and complained that the news media is treating him like bin Laden, maybe even worse, actually. Demonstrably false. But the idea that this is the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend because he too is against the war in Ukraine feels like a dangerous flashing red light.
Well, yes, it's a dangerous flashing red light. On the policy perspective, it's wrong. I just categorically disagree with Tucker Carlson's view about American national interests with respect to European security and Ukraine. But it's bigger than that. They don't get to parse it that way. This leak also did real damage to our relationship with South Korea. And on the next breath, the Tucker Carlson and others are always saying, we've got to be tougher on China. We've got to be tougher on China. Well, wait a minute. You cannot want to be tougher on China and have a sound policy towards China, as I do as well, and then say that this is okay to do this damage. In other words, we have national security interests here. We don't have Democrat and Republican security interests. And when they cherry pick things that just fit their narrative and not see the bigger damage that is done to, I think, our place in the world and our institutions, as John talked about, that I think is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and I think in the spirit of damaging U.S. national security interests around the globe, Liz Cheney tweeted this, John. Marjorie Taylor Greene makes clear yet again that she cannot be trusted with America's national security information and should not have a security clearance of any kind. I wanted to know why she does. She apparently sits on the Homeland Security Committee of all things. Do you agree, though? And I guess if the speaker won't do it, he said there's nothing he wouldn't do for Marjorie Taylor Greene. This probably isn't a solvable national security problem.
Well, from my perspective, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene has demonstrated time and time again that she's not fit to hold public office with some of her commentary that she has made even previously. And so therefore, I believe that she should not be provided any type of sensitive classified information. And she does have some clearances because of her role within the Congress and position on certain committees. But in light of these comments that are made, and as you pointed out before, you could have this bizarre policy view that we shouldn't be helping Ukraine. And if you do have that, you can still decry and condemn the unauthorized disclosure of our classified information that has been having damage, I think, to our interests abroad. And so therefore, I totally agree with Liz Cheney. And more I find myself in league with Liz Cheney. And I'm glad to see that she, among the few Republicans out there, has a spine and is willing to speak up.
It is all too rare, though. John Brennan, Michael McFaul, thank you so much for ending our week with this conversation. It's great to see both of you.